There's heartening news for all those who have been a bit despondent about the decline of reading in our schools and even later in life. Here it is, yesterday's paper. The headline is really something very heartening. Grace marks for taking part in reading in activities in schools. Wonderful news. But the only thing is that it is not a peripheral activity which really deserves grace marks. It is the soul of school. It is the soul, S-O-U-L, the soul of development of children. However, a good intentioned move. But this is a subject of scientific study and not just any reading. There is a lot of science in it. And I thought that with this kind of heartening news, it's time for me to share some of my thoughts, which of course is a result of my reading. I speak in the general context or background of a decline in reading so precipitous in the last 10 years. And I should know because over these past 35 years I have been involved in the development of young people in their mental and intellectual skills, and that's what is meant by mentoring. I've been in that for this period of time, and I have noticed a tremendous decline in reading comprehension. Now, this video, slightly exhilarated by this news report, is not going to be a lament on the decline of reading, rather a specific area, and that is, I would like to confine my talk to reading of text on paper, tactile paper by children in the age group of 10 to 15. Now, that's a very, very important age group, because that is the age when a magical, thrilling transition takes place from learning to read to reading to learn. This is that beautiful period. And therefore, it was really heartening to see that the Kerala government is specifically focused on Standard 5 to Standard 12 children, just about the age of 10 to 15 or so. So let me say this once again. I'm going to bring together the studies on the clear-cut advantage for children who read from printed text on paper, whether it is a textbook or it is a printed paper, a photocopy, a printed paper from some other device. Reading on paper isn't merely a medium difference, but a distinct and superior neural and cognitive experience. Now, a groundbreaking study, groundbreaking, authoritative, from neuroscientists at Columbia University has come down decisively for deeper reading from physical texts, based on paper. There's a clear advantage of reading a text on paper rather than on a screen. Using a sample of 59 children aged 10 to 12, that's exactly that period, transition from learning to read to reading to learn, Dr. Karen Froud asked its subjects, the children, to read original text in both formats while wearing hairnets filled with electrodes that permitted researchers, neuroscientists, to analyze variations in the children's brain responses. Performed in a laboratory under very strict controls. You know, you can expect that from a university like Columbia, because when they do a study, they have to be very thorough. This study used an entirely new method of word association, in which the children performed single word semantic judgment tasks after reading the passage. Semantic judgment. Say when you come across a word like forlorn, what kind of judgment do you make? What ails you, knight at arms? Alone and palely loitering. That's, I think, a poem from Keats. And Shakespeare, to be or not to be, that's the question. So this kind of forlorn should excite, provoke semantic word associations and judgment. So these children were asked to do that. That is deeper reading. And this kind of reading is critical in reading development. Reading development, that is also mental development ultimately. You develop, you become a full man. Francis Bacon said, reading maketh a full man. This is the process. And the conclusion was clear that reading from physical text printed on paper, those children had a clear advantage over the others. The next important insight or series of insights come from a scholar, Dr. Anne Mencken, professor at the University of Stavanger, Norway, who has dedicated a good bit of her life, more than a decade, on this one thing, experiential aspects of reading. And her conclusions are very, very clear. And that is, she has come out with the term embodied reading. Embodied reading implies an emotional experience of the person reading and the text. Embodied reading increases cognitive and experiential aspects of reading, and this engagement or this emotional triggering experience, affective, A-F-F-E-C-T-I-V, affective engagement, comes out of a personal connection to the printed text on paper. That is her insight and her conclusion. So we are at this stage, and we would better think of what it means for our young people. When all the evidence shows that there is a clear-cut advantage in reading, in deeper reading, a text on paper rather than on screen, it is good to think. Just start thinking of how we can help our children in the age group 10 to 15 to get to their full potential and not rob them of their full potential. And that is the thought that comes or should come uppermost in our mind. It might be true that you, in the course of your work, the utilitarian aspect of digital reading might be there. I am no one to question that. In fact, I do a good bit of reading through digital media for the simple reason that it takes a long while. Say for The Economist takes 10 days for me to get the physical copy. So I read a lot of text. So it is not that I'm some kind of a fundamentalist on these things. But it is not okay to rob our young of the potential, of the full potential of reading at that kind of age, 10 to 15. That is the theme of this video. Dr. John Gabrieli, an MIT neuroscientist and really an expert on reading and the brain, is skeptical about the promises of big tech and its salesmen. According to him, it is all product all the way, not purpose for the children. To push any product in 1,000 schools means a lot of money. They make a lot of money. But think of one thing. Let's not get carried away by the exaggerated promises of the digital revolution. Think of the children aged 10 to 15 and the absolute need of seeing that they reach their full potential. And if it means revising our thinking and bringing text, the old-fashioned method of reading text to learn as the centerpiece, we must consider that. That's my theme. It's possible that those who have been on digital reading for quite a while, who have never known the difference that it makes, the neural experience of print, of physical books. I am one of those of the older generation whose development was only because of that kind of reading of books. So if young people now listen to this video and not agree with any of them, so be it, because that is, of course, understandable, since you've been only reading digital reading, only doing digital reading for all these years. But it seems to me that there might come a time where you may have to look at this again, when you feel at some time, maybe in a few years, that this subject may be looked at again. So while we were talking about the semantic connections that children were asked to make in Columbia University's groundbreaking research, it seems to me that I am reminded of a poem by H.W. Longfellow, A Psalm of Life. Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime and leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. Footprints that perhaps another, sailing over life's solemn main, a forlorn and shipwrecked brother might see and take heart again. It is that emotion that has come to me now when I speak about this subject and the need to have another look at it.